Hello and welcome to AGT Racer. On today's Stuck in Traffic podcast, episode 2, we have Gadget334 from the driver's room. Okay, and welcome to Gadget334. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Grim. Very well. Good to be speaking to you finally.
Yes, and yourself. Now, obviously, we've had a conversation beforehand, which was really good. We were talking about driving and that. And previously in the Discord, some people have spoken about their PSN names. So why is yours?
Gadget334. I mean, really, it's not something anybody else is calling me, apart from the fact that everybody has always said for years and years, I like my gadgets. So, whether it's, many people know that I'm into photography. If it's photography and there's a new lens, a new camera, a new gadget for photography, I've got to have it. And I'm the same if it's, hi-fis or in the case of the gaming, I do like to have a nice wheel and stuff like that. So really, Gadget came from my love of gadgets, as simple as that.
Okay, yeah. So it's nothing to do with Inspector Gadget?
Nothing to do with Inspector Gadget, although, many people have said that when I've been entering a room,
yeah.
Or nothing to do with the Gadget show either.
Yeah, I can tell by the liveries that you're quite a technical person, and obviously, looking on the Discord in the chats and that you are into all your photography and things like this. So when did you get into the driver's room, and who introduced you?
So, like many people, it came in a roundabout way through getting involved with the FIA races. I wasn't keen on the dailies because they were too short. Typically sort of 4 laps, 5 laps, and I just found it a little bit too run and gun, and just you had to go for every gap, otherwise you were anywhere. So I was doing the slightly longer races, the FIA races. I was doing the manufacturers. I never did the nations, and I bumped into I literally did bump into Ayrton Senna, but it was clearly we had a little coming together, but neither of it wasn't malicious at all. And then actually we were put together in the very next race, and then we got chatting, and so we started then discussing our tactics for the next FIA race, and I was probably chatting to Senna for, I don't know, probably a couple of months or so, and sometimes we'd be in the same lobby and sometimes not.
Yeah.
And we just chatting on PSN chat, and then he disappeared for a few weeks, and then he came back and he said, yeah, no, I've been doing the FIAs recently, work commitments and stuff, but I've been racing with this bunch of northern guys that seem to have a nice little community going. He said, they're varying standards. He said, I think you'd fit right in. Do you want me to introduce you? And yeah, he introduced me to Mercer, and the rest is history.
Yeah, it's and I think that's how almost everybody's got into it. But it's interesting to hear the stories of different people. It's really so. When did you come up with the idea of the endurance championship?
Well, I think I started having an idea as soon as we started. I suppose it's what is it? Probably almost a year now since I joined the drivers. I think I might have came on board about September last year.
Yeah.
And at that time, I think we were doing it was like a 20 or a 25 mile race. So they would always set the distance to be, or was it 25 minutes or something? But I thought that was good. But I'm always yearning for something which is a bit more strategic. So I wanted longer races, and I was asking Mercer, can we do something longer? Can we do something longer? And we eventually went to the 40-minute races, which we started off with.
Yeah.
And I was saying, well, what about an hour and a half race? And he said, oh no, I don't think that'll fit in on a Sunday. But if you want to organise something, by all means, crack on. So I was looking at, first of all, a day that we could do it, and the Thursday was picked because I'm aware of the fact that many people were still doing the FIA, so that wiped out really Wednesdays and and Saturdays.
Yeah.
And I thought Fridays, yeah, I mean, people do have real life stuff that sometimes they want to go out on a Friday night. So I thought, yeah, Thursday that might work well. And the original concept was to actually have a 1 hour 15-minute race, so we could still fit it in within sort of like an hour and a half time frame. But of course, I found out then that you can't actually set 1 hour 15 as a time limit in the lobbies. It goes for 1 hour, goes to one and a half hours. So you know, the idea of that sort of started kicking around, and I thought it's a great opportunity because I've got this great bunch of people that I'm now in contact with. It's not like I've got to go and start from scratch. I can just leverage the people that race on Sundays and invite those and see who comes along. And you know, it seemed to catch the imagination of people. I think quite a few people do like the idea of a longer race that gives you. I think with the longer races, it does increase your patience. You can sit behind someone and you don't have to go for the move. You can either wait for their tires to go off, wait for them to stop for fuel or something, or you can really size them up before you plan your move. And that was really what drove me down that path. I wanted something even more strategic than what we were doing on Sundays.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. Yeah, I mean, the pits, I think I've cracked it sometimes, and then I'll do the replays after, and I think I've lost so much time in the pits. And yeah. I've been, you know, before it was just drain the fuel and occasionally fuel save if you have to, and then fill it back up. And watching other people doing the replays, it's like, I'm doing this completely wrong. So I've tried to experiment with different things, and I haven't found one that's 100% yet. But of course, it varies every race as well. So I think I've seen a load of people doing really well, and then they just completely lose it in the pits, really.
Yeah, and I think that was definitely very common in the early races. But I have noticed that you know, it's the Tier 1 I'm racing in now, so I don't see so much of it in the Tier 2. But certainly people are a lot more savvy about that now than they were when we started, because I think everybody saw that the people that were doing well were giving some proper thought to their fuel and tyre strategies.
Yeah, it's like Muller is extremely good at his tyres, and sometimes when you see him, before the tyres got split and I was doing the replay, sometimes you'd see him, his tyres were fine and his fuel was okay, and he pit the same time as everybody else, and his time was good as well. So you think maybe if he stayed out a couple more laps, then further on in the race, or the next, like 45 minutes later or something, he would be in a prime position, you know.
And I remember you've mentioned that a few times on your commentary as well, and I'm kind of nodding my head in agreement that he could have maybe stretched a little bit further, but you know, he's still getting some good results whichever way. And this season he's really come on strong. I mean, you know, he won the first two races in direct Tier 1, so he's doing something right now.
He's certainly
and if
going.
you look at on the other side, you know, my old mate that introduced me, Senna, is a really quick driver, and he's usually qualifying, you know, in the front two rows, and starts the race really well. But he's almost the opposite to Muller, that he does really crucify his tyres.
Yeah, Alex is the same as well.
Yeah. Well, I think with Alex, it's probably because he likes drifting a little bit and sliding, whereas I think with Senna, I think he uses a pad which does actually, I think, doesn't help your tyre wear too much, but he does seem to put a lot of energy into the front tyres in particular when he's going around corners, and that's his driving style. He's obviously got speed with it, but it's probably hurting him, you know, in the bigger picture of getting a good race finish as opposed to just starting the race well.
Yeah, I think everybody's a big fan of the endurance races. You feel drained after you've done it, though. It's like, you know.
You know you've been in a race, don't you? Yeah. I mean, certainly, you know, in these summer months, you know, it's quite often you're a bath of sweat at the end of it.
Yeah, I like what someone, was it Jev, one of the Jev guys, I can never remember which one, he put on Discord a picture of him sweating after the race, and you don't really get that with the pad, but when you're on the wheel, it's like your legs hurting, your arms hurting, you're sweating. It's like It's
Well,
great fun, to be honest.
I've got, I've got my force feedback, turned up to the max. So there is actually quite a high degree of effort involved in certainly going around the sort of the long, continuous left to right handers where you've got constant load on the steering wheel, and it's quite a workout. You feel a little bit of an ache in your shoulders afterwards or the day after.
Yeah.
So
I have it switched up on mine, and yeah, my hand grip. It's like the grip of my hands hurt a little bit, you know. If you're like driving in Wales or where up and through the mountains and you're full concentration, it's very similar to that, really. Like tight grip on the steering wheel because you just get focused, really. But I've seen on the obviously you can't please everybody. So how do you handle the responsibilities of what goes on in the endurance championship and that? Because you do try and please everyone, but sometimes you can't really.
I know, and look, it's a real balancing act, Grim, to be honest. Because yes, it's a community. There's nobody that is a boss and employees, because we're all there because we want to be there, and you've got to keep that you've got to try and keep everybody happy. You've got to try and be fair, but when you are taking on that responsibility of being the organizer, you do sometimes have to make a few decisions which are not going to please anybody. Please everybody. Sorry, you won't be able to please some people, but we had the issue back last season where we were getting some rage quitters, and it was tough because at that time we had 16 people, we had a single tier, we had 16 people racing all the time, and 2 or 3 reserves sat outside, and it seemed unfair if somebody 10 minutes into the race, because they had a crash or something, were just quitting, and you had people outside that would have probably given the right arm to be in that race. And I actually, there was one incident when I actually had 3 people personal message me and say, this rage quitting's got to stop because it's not fair on the reserves. And that was when I said, okay, right, rage quitting now is going to be an automatic 1 race ban.
Yeah.
I actually got quite a few people that said, well done for that. Now, unfortunately, Hit the Mac decided that he was going to walk away from that, and I think was it RS3 also. He also decided to walk away. I think with Mac, he'd already said he was not getting the enjoyment out of the racing as much anymore, and he needed a bit of a break. But I think on the whole, things like that, you have to, let's say, you have to be prepared to not be Mr. Popular all the time. If you take a look at how Bernie Ecclestone ran Formula One for 20, 30 years. He had his enemies, but I think F1 wouldn't be where it was today if you didn't have like a ringmaster that was just directing everything and making sure things just get done.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, someone has to say yes or no. There has to be a final answer to something, really.
Yeah.
So, what are the future plans for the DREC?
Well, I'd like to get to a stage where we've got 2 full tiers. At the moment, particularly with it, we were right on the cusp. I mean, right up to the eve of the first race of season 4, we were going to stay with a single tier, and then we had 2 or 3 drivers come in right in the last week that just tipped it over the balance and made sense to split into 2 tiers. So with a few people being on holiday, we're in some of the tiers we're having like 9 or 10 at the moment. I'd like to get that at least back up to 12 and 14 regularly racing, and ideally back up to a 16 per tier, with maybe a couple of reserves sat outside. I'm not in a rush to go to a 3rd tier just now, because it is a different event from the Sunday stuff. The Sunday stuff is really good fun, and it's variety and it's different cars, but it is based more on a kind of an arrive and drive type thing. I mean, you can just rock up in any livery and you can race, you can have some great fun.
Yeah.
Whereas I do that the DREC there's a little bit of effort involved in getting set up. You've got to get your team name, your numbers, paint all your cars the same, and all that stuff. However, having said that, once you've done that, it really does run itself. I mean, if you want to, you can run those same 4 cars, for a whole year.
Yeah.
Of course, you can change them every 8 weeks. So I'd like to think that there's a little bit of a barrier to entry in terms of effort. But once you're in, I'd like to think it does make the series a bit more sticky, and people want to stay with it and not drift away. I know I get excited every new season starts. I want to see who's swapped to what cars, and if there's any new livery tweaks and stuff like that, and see how people go. I think one of the things I'd definitely like to do for Tier 1, and I've spoken about this on Discord, is to make it even more realistic and make it hopefully more respectful as well, is introduce a heavy damage for the Tier 1.
Yeah. The argument for heavy damage, for whichever level it is if somebody hits you off and causes all that damage, it's not your fault. But obviously, if you make a mistake and hit the wall yourself, then it is your fault, and yes, you should have the heavy damage. So I think it's a balancing act. I think you're right introducing it maybe into Tier 1 first, and then maybe into Tier 2 after.
Yeah, I was trying to go like as I say, I always refer to the carrot and stick approach. We've already got now 2 points reward for a penalty-free race, and the penalties are, that's the same as the heavy damage, right? You can get a penalty when you might feel it's not your fault at all.
Yeah.
In the last drag race, I made what was I thought a clean move on, who was it? V8. It was V8. Yeah, his tires were going off, and he kind of turned into my rear quarter panel. And he said afterwards, Gadget shouldn't have got a penalty for that, But that's the rule, right? We said that if the red dot is there, you don't get any points.
True,
so
true.
I fully accept that. And okay, I missed out on a couple of points there, and it's the same for everybody. Obviously, if I would have got damage for that, then maybe it's a little more difficult to forgive it, because that could have actually ruined my race. Then I might have had to make an extra pit stop, unscheduled pit stop, and then you lose 30 seconds. So yes, it is a tough one, but the heavy damage is something that certainly does really separate the men from the boys. Then I mean, it does mean that probably in the race you're not going to be racing at 10/10 the whole time. You're going to have to rein it in a bit to even further improve your consistency. But I know, as many people know, I know Plux outside of the gaming. I met him back on GT5 when he came and joined my team for the real-time 24-hour Nürburgring ring race. A team of 4 drivers, racing in real time. Started on a Saturday afternoon, finished on a Sunday afternoon. Everybody was three mates were at my house. You'd actually do driver changes and sleep and all the rest of it. Why am I saying that? Because in that race, it was the Nürburgring 24-hour track, and we had heavy damage on and dynamic weather. Now that was real pressure. I mean, it starts raining in the middle of the night, and you've got slicks on.
Yeah.
Chances are you're going to go off, and then a 9-minute lap turns into about a 15-minute lap as you limp back to the pit. So it's a balancing act. But if we're trying, all of us, to try and make this, they say the real driving simulator, don't they? That it's not an arcade game; it's the real driving simulator. And in real racing, you make mistakes, you get hit by other people, and whether it's fair or not, you suffer through it. So.
Yeah. I did like the dynamic weather, to be honest, and I do wish it had come back. From somebody who was always at the back when it was in the first tier, it was just one tier. It adds that little thing, like the harder the track, the harder the conditions, yet the people who are not as consistent do suffer, but everybody suffers as well, do you know what I mean? So it helps when you're at the back a little bit more, because you're at the back anyway. So in a selfish way, from somebody at the back, when you've got I know some people sometimes disagree on tracks and things like this, or whatever it may be, but you think, well, it is what it is, you know. But it'd be good to have that the rain and weather conditions, because it would make it unpredictable. You know what I mean?
And I think that, that's certainly the case. And if you get a track which is in the same way as, the weather conditions makes it more difficult and easier to make a mistake, some tracks are like that as well. I mean, we've mentioned before about Big Willow. That's a track which, if you make a mistake there and you go off into the desert, you just keep on going off.
Yeah.
You keep on going off. And for that reason, that I had an epic race there with Plux at the end of season 1, which was one of my favourite races ever. But even though we were way out front, we were racing so close, there was a chance that if we would have made contact, we could have both gone off.
Yeah.
And whoever was third would have gained half a lap on us and probably taken the win. So you're always balancing that gamble of pushing to the limit. And there are some Brands Hatch is another one that it's quite unforgiving. If you go off there, you usually hit something and you suffer, and so I like that. I like the fact that it rewards you to drive within yourself, and it doesn't it punishes you if you overstep the mark.
Yeah, it's like the green hell. I don't mind that. I mean, it takes a lot of concentration, and sometimes I can get some laps in where I don't go off, but sometimes I'll be flying and I'll push it that little bit extra and just touch the dirt and bang. And it's like, it does force you into a bit more consistency, I think. So
yeah, I think about the green hell. That's one that does definitely divide the communities. You've got the people that love it, and you've got the people that hate it. Everybody is like a digital decision. It's a 1 or a 0. There's nobody that says, yeah, it's all right. It's a love or a hate. And I agree that for probably 90% of the Nordschleifer, it's very difficult to pass somebody on merit. There's a couple of places where you can, it's wide enough, or there's a breaking point you possibly can get past. But for me, that still doesn't make it a bad racing circuit, because you will get chances to pass when people go off, and people will go off on that circuit if they're pushing too hard. So, yes, it's not a classic circuit where you've got a long straight and then a breaking point you can outbrake somebody. No, but if you don't have to just follow around in a sort of a long crocodile, and you don't think you're ever going to make a place up. You will if you're patient and you keep within the track limits.
Exactly. Anything. I personally like it, but I find it takes a lot of concentration, But I like it. I do. I liked it in the previous games, though, to be honest. So where do you see the this time next year? What do you reckon the DREC will look like? 2 tiers, or 3 tiers, or 4? Whenever you're ready.
Where do I see Drek in 12 months' time? Yes, maybe 1 extra tier. I wouldn't probably like to see it go beyond 3 tiers, because I think it is a major commitment. As I say, it's more of a commitment than the Sunday series, which is a little more arrive and drive. So in terms of tiers, I would say probably 3 maximum, with a few reserves, lingering outside to ensure we got full lobbies. But other things that I'd like to see happen is, I would love to have at least the tier 1 races broadcast live, and I mean beyond what we're doing at the moment. I know some drivers like DJ Rice and Kimaru and yourself, Grim, are starting to live stream the races, but obviously that's not always with a full commentary, and I appreciate concentration is needed when you're putting in a good lap.
To be honest, I find it difficult when I'm in the middle of a race. If I'm, I'll lose concentration. If there's a good battle in front of me, I'm like, I can't help but commentate sometimes. I'm like, this person's got pole, and look what's going on at the front.
I am completely focused when I'm racing. I can't listen to music. I can't do anything, So I fully appreciate that. I've noticed actually with Kim that when he's racing in the like the N class cars and that, he's quite talky. But when it's the super formulas, he doesn't hardly say a word the whole race, because those things really require your full concentration.
Exactly.
So you know, what I'd like is if we, of course, then it's pulling somebody away from racing, but if somebody like yourself or similar could kind of take up a spot in the lobby, if we got lobbies where there is a couple of extra spots, and could do the spectating role, so you could flick around the cameras and look at those battles and do a proper commentary without having to worry about detracting from your racing.
Like what I did on the MRC?
Yes, exactly that. I mean, I think that is, you know, the next level. I still think that there is a place for like the edited highlights where you do a proper job and you can go back and show replays and everything, but I think that would be really cool. And I know from races where I've not been able to race myself, maybe I've been on holiday or something, I love to tune in and see what's going on when I'm away. You know, I used to always tune into Jammy's live streams when I was away, and you know, looking forward to getting him back as well. But obviously he's gone now, and we don't have a live streamer in Tier 1 at the moment.
Well,
so that's
I think a solution around that would be, from a commentary point of view, and for people who don't want to leave the racing series, potentially do them at different times. You know what I mean? That probably won't be yet, but that could be further down the line. So Wednesday's Tier 1, or no, Thursday's Tier 1. You could have a different day for Tier 2, whatever it may be, or just do it an hour after. Or do you know what I mean? I suppose for live commentary, there's things that would need to change, unless because I would do it gladly, but I'd love stuff like this. This is what I would, in a dream, would like to do. But I enjoy the racing as well. I really look forward to the Thursday race. Yeah. I'm glad that, Grim, because you know, you're such an important part of the community, and that, you know, when I look back on how things have changed in less than a year since I joined the community, I mean, I think the strength of the drivers community is you've got so many people with different skill sets, all prepared to put in, you know, some serious effort from their personal lives in order to benefit the whole community. I mean, yes, there's yourself and the other commentators, and I know, you know, when Muller says it takes 3 or 4 hours to put together a video, I believe every bit of that, because I wouldn't have a clue how to do it myself. But then you've got people like Daz. You know, I've only got to come up with an idea. Okay, I want the reigning champion to wear a gold number plate. You know, bang, and it's done within minutes most of the time. Yeah, and everybody has a role to play, don't they?
And he looks after the spreadsheets for me and everything. So I'm eternally grateful for the support role that Daz gives me on our little bit of stuff. But you know, even obviously Mercer for starting the whole thing. None of us would be talking if it wasn't for him. He is Mr. Driver's Room, and deserves all the plaudits for that. But you know, even, you know, some people could easily read the comments and think that Mungino and myself are at loggerheads, but absolutely not the case. I have so much respect for the guy. He's brought in so many drivers because he races a lot more in the FIA lobbies than anybody else. So we've got him to thank for filling the grids a lot of the time, and also having him as that resource that if somebody comes in, and particularly in Drek, because it's there is a bit more setup, and you know, we do insist on the cars all being nicely painted and looking the same, and not everybody is as skilled as I would say most of the people in the community. They're not, you know, they've never done liveries before, and to have him available, that he's always willing to help people out and do 4 cars for them in pretty short order, you know. So, you know, as I say, don't be thinking anybody that me and Mung don't get on. Yeah, we voice our opinions, we're both strong-minded, but I think that's healthy. As soon as we decide, okay, it's doing it my way or it's doing it the other way, we put it behind us and we crack on. I think one of the other things I would love to... Sorry, did you want to say something on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you're right. I mean, I was clipped yesterday by a couple of people, and it's not like I'm angry or anything, but it's more like you want to make everybody aware, but you're not that bothered, just so that it's like, okay, so if I do something wrong, it's like I want to know, so that way then I don't do it again. So sometimes when I've been a back marker and I really, really don't want to ruin the race for the two guys who are racing right behind me that's going to overtake. So it's like I need to move over, but I'm not going to lose time either. So it was that debate about, the guys who are overtaking the back markers, they should leave a bit of space and overtake at the correct moment. But sometimes before that discussion took place, it was like I need to move out the way. You know what I mean? And I think obviously the same with you and Mung. I don't think people probably think that you have issues with each other. It's just he has an opinion, you have an opinion, and then you work it out, and it's done. The same as most of the people in there, really.
Well, I think this is the great thing generally about the racing. When you're racing with people that you actually know, I think it's in like the dailies and the FIAs as well. It's the anonymity of the internet that makes for the really bad driving that you get, because people are thinking, oh, all I'm interested in is winning. That's it. And if I bump somebody out of the way, well, so what? I'm probably never going to race with them again. I never have to actually, maybe a little bit of shit in the lobby where they say something and I'll just leave the lobby and that's it. That's the mentality.
Exactly.
Whereas in the driver's room, for me anyway, yes, I want to win, and I've had a few wins, luckily, but I'm more interested in winning the respect of everybody else by being a good driver than I am about finishing on the top step of the podium. I'd much rather have a really close battle and finish fourth, where you've really known that you've driven well, you've given respect and room to the people around you, and you've all come out and say, well, that's a brilliant race.
Yeah.
Then winning by half a lap and like, oh, look how brilliant I am, sort of thing. So it's the fact that we all get together afterwards and we chat on Discord, I think, that builds that respect. And no, I'm not going to try and dive down there because bloody hell, Muller's going to give me shit on Discord tomorrow if I do that. So let me sit back and be patient, or no, I can't do that because I know when Grim's commentating, he's going to say, what was he thinking doing that?
And
so
I'll speak the truth. I'll speak what I think I've seen, So if it looks like you're in the wrong, then I'll say, well, I don't know if he was in the wrong there, so I'll leave it open for discussion. And that way then everybody's learning, because there's some things I've thought, bloody hell, I didn't know that. Maybe, okay, that's a bit of the etiquette. Because when you go on to different, like the dailies or the FIAs, or if you're just having a normal race, it can get a bit messy sometimes, and you're like, well, this isn't the standard I expected. But at the same time, maybe we should be driving messy in these areas, because the driving room teaches you that, okay, a bit more respect, you know what I mean? And it's that I think everybody loves. So where do you reckon the driver's room itself will be this time next year?
Well, I think we're starting to see it kind of fragmented and almost going into niche markets. I mean, with in the last 3 months, obviously we've had the Sunday racing split into two, and we've got the open wheel formula, the super formulas now as a support race, and we've got Muller's series on Saturday, which unfortunately I'm never available on Saturday, so I've not been able to join in with that. But I watched the stream yesterday while I was having a bit of food, and that looked brilliant fun. I mean, that I think is taking it. If DREC is maybe of the drivers' room races, maybe the most professional, because it's there's a lot more rules and more commitment needed. I think Muller's series is going the opposite way, where it's all about the fun. Yeah. And you've got boost switched on and everything. So if you do make a bit of a fool of yourself and you drop to the back, you do have that chance to catch up because the boost helps you. So with that, it's not so much about the winning, because the boost makes it a leveler and the ghosting is on and all the rest of it. But it's just about going out and having a good blat around a track with your mates. And if you win, great. But if you have a big dice and you finish ninth, you probably still get some enjoyment out of it. So yeah, I'm seeing all those different things, and I see there's Plux and Muller and Mung were talking about another series based on I think GR3 Japanese cars or something like that on maybe a Tuesday night. So, you know, maybe we're reaching a position where there might be a driver's room event, you know, every day of the week.
Yeah.
And you can cherry pick and dip into whichever level of professionalism or whatever type of car you want, whether it's an N-Class car or a GR car, and maybe we become, you know, the one-stop shop for any type of racing.
I think so, to be honest. I think it's starting slowly, but the way I see it is, a prime example, that MRC, I did a live stream last week, checked, am I doing it? Yep. And it was like 20 seconds before the race started, oh no, you need to leave for somebody to race. Now, the fact that I don't mind leaving for somebody to race, that's not an issue whatsoever, but know about it beforehand. And it made me appreciate all of the hard work that yourself and Mercer and Muller and everyone puts in, and Daz and everyone, and Mungino and Kimara, everybody who organises parts of the events, or opens a lobby, etc. We know how many people are going to be there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and actually I should give a name check as well. When I was talking about, you know, Mercer and Daz and everything, got to give a name check as well to Nightmare Racer, because I think possibly the introduction or the adoption of Discord really did kick us on, you know, and to another level of organisation, because the first few months when I joined Driver's Room and everything was just on that one PSN chat, you could never find anything. Yeah. You didn't know what, and every, you know, an hour wouldn't pass of somebody saying, you know, what's the time of day or what tires are we using, and because you couldn't just scroll back and back and back through, it was easier just to ask again.
Yeah.
And now with everything all nicely, you know, subdivided, I see Muller's got his Super Saturday channel now as well. Everybody can just find that information so easily. So really good thanks for Nightmare Racer. And I think that originally came through, I think it was Maverick originally told Mung about that, because he'd done something similar with VLX or something. So and it was Nightmare that actually said, yeah, I can do that, and put it together. So again, kudos to those guys, because, you know, half of what we do wouldn't be able to happen if we weren't now so dependent upon the Discord stuff.
Exactly, and I think each you see a progression each like month or so, really. So it's like I was commentating originally and trying to cover all the races, and then as soon as it's and then we had the issue of what do we do when I was working on those shifts, and then obviously Plux was doing it, and Muller, and now we're going to have Kamara and DJ, so it's opening everything up. And to be honest, exactly like what you said, I couldn't do the Saturday, but I actually sat down, and, you know, when the missus went to bed and that, I sat down and watched it, and I thought, it looks great fun, and I enjoyed just watching it, you know.
Yeah, well, I'm a big Formula One fan. I always watch the Formula One races because you know all the drivers. That for me is the big difference between Formula One and say GP2, where probably the racing in GP2 is better, but I don't know any of the drivers, therefore you don't know the personalities. And that's the great thing about when you're watching one of your videos, you know the people. And for that reason, you know, I used to religiously follow BTCC when it was broadcast on Channel 4 or whatever. Yeah. And now I'd rather watch one of your videos of me mates racing than I would watch BTCC. Yeah, and how great is that?
Yeah, it is good. You have sort of segued me into something else, where I was going to say, by doing the videos, you're sort of watching everybody's driving, and obviously you guys see the finished product, if you like, and you feel like you get to know people's personalities, even if you don't speak to them, or even if they're quiet on Discord, just by the way that they're driving. So how would you best describe yours?
My driving style.
Yeah.
So I like to think I'm a thinker. I do give a lot of thought to the planning and to the strategy. I think I like to think I'm a fair racer. You know, there's I think most people know that I'm probably not going to dive bomb them. But on the other hand, if they do leave a gap and I feel that I've done enough to win the corner, win the apex, you know, I am coming through. There's no two ways about it. And I think most of the guys that, you know, I generally only get a chance to race with typically the same 5 or 6 people, the ones that are at a similar pace to me in DREC. But I think we're all at kind of that level. We know what to expect from the other person, and I like that. You know, I know if you know, I've been racing Flux for years, and he is definitely quicker than me in 99% of cases. But if he's behind me, I can also trust him. I know that as long as I keep it tight, he's going to struggle to get past, because you know, I don't have to suddenly think, oh, I can get out of the way here because he's going to crash me off the track. Yeah. So yeah, I'd like to think I'm a fair but hard racer, or hard but fair, I should say. I'd like to think I'm consistent. I do focus a lot on just being consistent and, you know, keeping all my lap times within, you know, a second or so of even when the tires start going off. And as I say, strategy, pitting at the right time, knowing how long the tires will go on, and that's what I put the practice in for. Yeah. And going back to your point as well about, you know, knowing the drivers and stuff like that, that was one of my original goals when I came up with the rules for the DREC. I know there was a little bit of resistance, first of all, with, oh no, we want to paint our cars all different and in every race and everything. But you know, well, this is for you to comment on, because you're the commentator. You're looking at it as an outsider, if you like, when you're doing those videos, and you're looking at it as a viewer would watch, somebody who's not in the community. Yeah. And I wanted it so that, you know, you see, you always like the Atari livery of Rocker. You know, that is his personality now. You see that car and you know who it is, you know where they are in the field and everything. And I wanted those, the liveries of the cars to be like, you know, a football shirt on a football team or something like that, that you instantly recognise it and think, I know, well, I saw him racing 3 races ago, you know, that sort of thing. That and the race numbers and all stuff like that. It was me. It doesn't affect the racing at all. When you're in the car, it doesn't matter what car or what colour car you're racing it against. But I was trying to think of making the series as professional as possible, make it closer to real life and easier for somebody that is not a full-time viewer to pick up on it and say, yeah, I know these guys. I saw this bunch racing, you know, 4 years ago.
Well, this is why I wanted to do this as well. I mean, it's not specific to the driver's room. I'm going to put other things on here later dates, but I wanted to start with the driver's room, and so people get to know the people, if you like. So, who is your biggest rival at the moment in the DRC, EC?
Well, you know, I'm always shooting to try and beat Flux and F1, but I think they are quite honestly sort of head and shoulders above everybody else at the moment. That if they don't make mistakes, or as long as they show up, that, you know, they're going to be battling for first and second. So I'm kind of in that group just behind that, and in those drivers I would probably put Nijogger and Muller. They regularly get good finishes. I mean, Senna I've spoken about before, because he's typically up there at the front of the race, but he fades away a bit because of his strategy and his high tyre wear. So, you know, I would say probably Muller and Nijogger are my 2 closest rivals in overall performance and race pace.
I think so. And who do you reckon, who's the one to watch? Who would you say to keep an eye out for?
Yeah, so, you know, V8 surprised me in the last race, actually. I didn't expect him to pop it on the second row of the grid. That surprised me, because my plan with the Lexus was to be on the second row of the grid, probably be out qualified by the Toyotas, but the fast starting beat them into the first corner, and as it happened, I didn't quite make that because I was 1 row further back. But I think of ones to watch, certainly I've seen coming on this season, is Ben. I know you tipped him a while ago. He's having some really good, consistent races at the moment. And of course, next season, I think we've got some really quick guys coming up from Tier 2. I think Chris and DJ Rice will slot straight in and be immediately up there at the front end of the field.
I
as soon as they get promotion.
I think it's going to be very interesting next season. It will take, be splitting the tiers. It'll take a couple of seasons for it to level out. But I think once it does, which I think will happen next season, that's when we'll see the closest racing we've seen. Because everybody will be at a certain level.
Yeah, I think you're already seeing in DREC this season, it's going to be a real close battle for the championship. Okay, there's a little bit of a falsehood there that, Plux got DC'd when he was leading round 1, was it? Or round 2? But yeah, he suffered that, and F1, through real life commitments, couldn't make the first 3 races. But then Muller, takes advantage of that and wins the first 2. Nees leading, even though Muller won the first 2, Nees leading the championship through to his consistency and podiums and stuff. So you've got the really fast guys playing catch up and some real consistency from the others. So that's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, it will be interesting when Plux and F1 get a move on again. It'll be very, very interesting to see what happens. So
I think as well when the tiers sort themselves out and we've genuinely got all the quickest drivers in Tier 1 and then the other drivers in Tier 2, it will make it easier to do seeding for any other one-off special events.
Exactly.
And, one of the things I would love to do is do something like the thing that brought me and Plux together, which is a team longer endurance race with shared driving. Now, at the moment, the way that Gran Turismo Sport is, you can't do remote driver changes. I would love to be able to share a car with, somebody living in the north of England, and you do part of the race, and you go into the pits, and then it switches over to somebody else.
I think you can share play, can't you? So where you get somebody to, if you've got the game, somebody else can play the game. So in effect, it could be done. You just have to redo that when you're in the pits.
No, but then they'd start from scratch. You can't do it. They'd start with 0. The only way you could do that if you did it you'd have to have like 3-4 separate races and add the time together, which it takes away from it a little bit. But maybe a multi-class race or something like that. I would love to. And to be honest, I'm already looking at doing something like that in the 4-week Christmas break at the end of the season as a kind of a precursor for something next year. And to use the drivers we've already got and the seedings. It's been kicked around on Discord where you maybe grade the drivers into gold, silver, and bronze, and you've got to have either 3 silver drivers or a gold and a bronze and a silver or something like that, so that you've got weighting in the teams. And I'd love to have a team event because we are one big community, and I think team events is really cool. So you could share all kinds of stuff then. So I'll be playing around with maybe coming up with something as a one-off event over Christmas, and that might be the precursor for something a little more regular. A team event wouldn't be every week. It might be once a quarter or once or a couple of times a year, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, that does. I think it's just going to grow and grow. And is there anything you want to say to anyone before we leave? Because we'll wrap this up now in a minute.
Yeah, it's gone on a bit. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. That's
fine. Not really. I mean, just once again to say how grateful I am for everybody that both contributes and everybody that races for making it such a brilliant community to be part of. And I've now just dropped everything else on Gran Turismo Sport, and this is I have a little bit of admin and paperwork to do for the organisation, but really I'm just concentrating on this now, and that's my whole reason for racing online these days. So thanks for making it so good that it holds my attention the way it does.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you very much for joining, and we'll see you on the track.
Exactly. See you on Thursday. Well,
mate,
you'll be on tier 2, but you'll be on tier 2. But yeah, okay. Literally, I'll see you then. Thanks
right,
a lot, guys.
Thank
Nice
you.
speaking to you.
Bye bye. Bye bye.